And we are live. All right. So thank you for your patience and graciousness this evening. There was a few things we were trying to figure out on the back end. And amongst all that, we've also got this ice, which is actually a good introduction into what's going on this week, which is going to be the American experience, particularly its musical experience. What happened is many, many moons ago, practically 4 centuries ago, you had a fair bit of stringed instruments that were found throughout the kingdom, but as people moved here into the colonial areas, they brought what meager means and resources they had. And some of that included some of those stringed instruments, everything all from your violin to rough guitars, rough lap instruments. So moving in here primarily with that Scots Irish influence, you had people moving into the mountains. There was a little bit of an English influence in there too, of course, although some of that was more harpsichord and a little bit more highbrow. But as people spread out throughout the colonies, you got what would eventually become the American experience in music. That is country music. That is single handedly the part of heritage Americans that they can claim as theirs since the beginning. Now, we'll jump into it tonight how there are some other influences and whether or not bluegrass can even be counted as a heritage form of music. But having said all that, I want to introduce my guest, Mr. Jack Milton. How are we doing this evening?
Doing great. How about you?
I am doing all right. I'm a little bit frustrated with some of the things going on with the weather and just with stuff here on the farm this week. There's
Uh,
been some setbacks and frustrations, but that's all right. This will be a nice reprieve from that.
yeah,
And yeah, we will find out that I'm relatively ignorant of country music, but boy, I like it a lot.
yeah. I feel like a Johnny come lately too. But there were also. It's funny that it was my life and family experience when I was in my 20s provoked me to acknowledge the greatness of country music. Where before I'm Gen X, so in the 80s, everybody's music was a way to distinguish themselves from everybody else, and it was a little time before I felt comfortable with my Alabama uh, pre-civil, pre-statehood, pre-independence family lineage of being Southerners from that way back.
Yeah,
Um, before then it was all the stuff from the era and the rock era.
absolutely. Yeah, well, and so that's something I'm looking forward to us getting into and sort of teasing out. Is country lyrics or is it music? Because once you get into Johnny Horton, Johnny Cash, even Elvis Presley to some degree, I mean, there's overlap where I think you can make the argument all of them sort of entered inside of the country arena while also having a musical sound that wasn't necessarily country.
Yeah, I would agree with that definitely. The overlap in the 50s and the Sun music scene and rockabilly in general.
Yes. Yep. So I'm digging already. I'm digging some of these daggum comments we got. I see a Taylor Swift is my favorite country artist, which hopefully we can dissuade this person from that stance. But then Arthur's jumping in saying going to Nashville as a kid was like making a trek to the Southern country music mecca. I can't imagine, man. Even in the 80s and 90s, there was still enough there to say that, man, Nashville's where it's at. Now, if you were to go to Nashville today, I think there's a strong case to be made that that's almost country music blasphemy if you were to head to Nashville today. But
It's a plastic museum.
yeah,
I
yep,
mean, there's still the remnant is still there, and the power
right,
of what's left is still there. But it's many Return of the King analogies of we're looking for the
hmm,
last bloom of the sacred tree out there. It's out there someplace. There's
yes.
the remnant, and the ruins are still there. Going down the river.
Well,
But
and that is, I'm sure there's a bar somewhere in Clarksville or just outside of Nashville somewhere where there's a kid who's going to bring it up. But there you go. There's your Return of the King. I'm already falling into it.
exactly,
So,
it's so pertinent to our time, even though we're talking about country music.
right.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. So a little inside baseball for y'all. We sort of outlined this very loosely about which way we wanted to go. And so some of the questions we're going to work through tonight, where did country music come from? When did it commercialize? Is it the music or lyrics, which we already touched on just a minute?
Mhm.
And then we're going to try to work through some of the different genres and really, really tease out where is country headed? Where's it been? A lot of what we think even now as traditional isn't as traditional as we might think. And then we'll get into maybe a little neo-traditional. And then Jack's going to be running us through who is up and coming, who's next, what is it that we can grab hold of. Is it Coulter Wall and Tyler Childers? Is that sort of a spark inside of a frying pan or a tempest in a teapot? So start us off, Jack. Where did it come from? What When we talk about country music, what is it, and what is it we're trying to get out of
England.
this?
It comes from England and Scotland,
Yeah.
and some Irish. I always my first memory when I was in rock music. My dad graduated class of '67. Was way into like the Brit. He's 14 when the Beatles came, so I have all this like long family lineage of no, and my dad's record collection of all this stuff with rock music. But my understanding from of country was hopping over from the rock, being ensconced in rock music as a kid. But I always remember Dickie Betts. My first time I had an understanding of this, Dickie Betts saying that the one of the two lead guitarists, original of the Allman Brothers, said that well either his daddy or maybe his dad's family all played string music, which is old time music. We call that would be the Americana pre bluegrass with the name. We had more people playing dulcimers and fiddles, and not just guitars and mandolins. So I think of that strand, and even a friend of mine that I used to play in rock band with, he did a stint playing old time music, because on par with string music. So I mean that's clearly where it comes from, and I thought a lot about because that leading into commercialization of music, because I know that. One of the things for me that was profound about music, particularly someone that wanted to play music and had aspirations back in the day, performing live and making your own music, was the ethereal nature of music. Is that it's like a vapor, and you got to be there to catch it. And if you didn't, well, I'm sorry, you would have liked it, but it was only there for the people in the room. And it's once it's gone, however beautiful or magical it is, at some point it's gone. And
Yeah.
so, your family, my family, I'm one generation away from like family singings.
Okay.
My
Yep.
dad's family were Pentecostals, and my wife's family also. She, though, they were still doing it. She's just we were close to the same class, like 6 years younger than me, but her family was still in it, also Pentecostal. So there's like a real roots connection, particularly for my wife. We shared a lot of music and art. We're both art people. We're like into the making, the creativity. You want to make music, you want to write, you want to create things, but we were always not like the art people, because I think we had a really firm grounding on our blue collar Southern rural family history. Kind of have to repudiate that. I mean, a lot of people in what you would say art circles are the cool kids. Particularly, we're talking like grunge era youths. You acknowledge those things once you're a little more comfortable with yourself. But we had family connection to those things. I remember my grandparents playing hymns. My grandma would play the piano. My grandfather played guitar, and he would play it like what's the guy the famous country singer who did T for Texas? What's from the 20s and 30s? What's his name? He died of
Oh,
tuberculosis.
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
it's I'll think of it as somebody thing. Anyway, he played guitar like that, and they
Yeah.
would play. That was just for their entertainment. They'd sing hymns, and he'd sing the old rugged cross. And
Yes.
so there's with country music, you're going to have a more connection to people whose um, family history is the enjoyment of playing music in a familial circle. I mean, that's
Hmm.
or else you just grew up adjacent to a bar that was a honky tonk.
Right.
It's usually one or the other. It's either you have a Christian religious lineage, and the more low church, excited, upbeat music, the more that kind of enhances it.
Yep.
Because that's definitely my own family's, mine and my wife's family's experiences, and that's your pipeline to country music is your family background. Like I said, either you grew up with church singings or family singings, or you grew up next to a honky tonk.
Yes. So Midwit jumps in and he says it's a vapor and you got to be there to catch it. One, he thought that statement was very poetic, but then two, it caught me off guard too, because I think that's probably the perfect way to put it. Especially so what's here on X right now. So Sandbatch went and he screwed me over a bit because he ended up taking his affecting the account that he wrote this on. I don't know if his account's offline again or not, but what it was, I remember this. He had a post up here about talking to Justin Towns Earl. You ever listen to him? Know about him?
Just his dad.
Okay, yeah. So his music is just it's something. You ever heard Joe Pug?
I've heard of him.
Okay, yeah. So it's that bar room, not college rock, and I don't want to quite say hipster because I don't think that does him justice. But
Mm,
anyway, it is sort of that, man. You got to be there. You
yeah.
have to see it live, and so yeah, that's what I'm laughing about, saying, "Oh, he screwed me over," because man, Sam Batch has stories about going and seeing Justin Towns, just seeing him live and talking to him, and just there in the pisser. And it's one of those things where um, it's something that people that listen to the show too often will know that, or I use it too often. You have to be able to participate into something. And
Yeah,
so
there's a reciprocal aspect. The playing in front of an audience is not like playing in front of your mirror.
yeah,
And and when you're young, particularly, there's a lot of playing in front of the mirror before you get in front of the audience. But it is
well,
it's a delicate thing because when
yeah,
there's a certain and I know some of it is just in people's heads, but there is a certain chemistry.
hmm
And I liken it to staying up till 2 in the morning, looking at the stars, drinking red wine, and writing poetry. I mean,
right.
it's very like flowery shirt, but it's a real thing. It's a real
My
experience of humanity.
my gal, it's frustrating because maybe she's an outlier with her family being primarily German, but when I met them, and then up through more or less till her grandfather passed,
Mhm.
they had, like you said, singings. I don't even know if they called him that, but he was writing hymns, and they would sit together and they would sing, and it was something that I've always been on the outside of, because my musical chops are slim to none. Probably the most musical thing I've done is gone to an Iron Maiden show and just loved every minute of it. But
Yeah.
uh,
Back in the day, whenever I played music, so I graduated high school in 1987, a little early,
yeah,
and my adult kids hate me because I would say it was in that era. People there were still everybody. There was a garage band in every garage. There were
yes,
all kinds of like little piddling teen venues where where you'd have punk rock shows. Like the we were getting into like second wave of American hardcore after Minor Threat and Black Flag,
yeah,
and it was a lot of genuine ground level activity. So that's among other things that have happened. And since it kind of puts you in touch with the idea of like organic ground level movements of things that just happen because people want to do them. I mean, they're
right,
saying like baseball and then they're starting your own band. But in that era, I mean, when I was the summer I graduated high school, I got my ears pinned back by my town's local, what we would call indie band. They were like a cross between the Damned's first album and Cheap Trick, and they
okay,
were fantastic. And
yes,
they had an album out in Europe, and they never went anywhere, but they were phenomenal. So there were those things you would just walk into. I think you ever, I don't know what was the group that did the 5 piece chickens. It was Southern Culture on the Skids. I don't know if there was a band that
no,
was on the alternative rock charts. It was a very kitschy Southern thing, or a 3 piece. A lot of
okay,
a lot of Mayberry type jokes. But I walked into like their first tour in Huntsville, Alabama. Didn't know who they were. Just I wanted to get out of
yes,
the house at the Tip Top Cafe, and walked into them playing. That they had like a 6 piece, and it was part psychobilly with a strobe light and guy beating on a trash can, and then the rest of it was like really toned down, like Patsy Cline covers.
okay,
And it was amazing. That was like
yes,
just
all right,
totally left field. I didn't know who these people were, or that they would have
yes,
a couple of hits by 1995. But
right,
that was so. I say that to place myself my own perspective of there was a period there of the like pre-grunge,
yeah,
mid to late 80s. You're like where all the kids listen to the Cure and the Smiths, sort of Anglophile, post David Bowie, pre grunge, and like in
hmm
the 1980s, all the things that you associate with grunge in 1991, all the clothing styles, and all those things were already out there as early as 1982 or 83, and
yes,
those things. So that's another illustration I have hands on of seeing how those things develop into something. And the same way with country music. I said that about commercialization because sheet music was being, sold back in the 19th century. But
yes,
once you get into acetate discs and the cylinders where people can buy those, is where the people the businessmen find out that there's all these niche ethnic type music, whereas for the blacks and for the hillbillies, certainly for the hillbillies, not just musicals being the most popular. Most people would be interested in musicals, but there's a big market for what they would call hillbilly music that they found. This is in the 20s. That because the whole of the United States, all like 70 million people that lived in America then, or 100 million, well, it was all the woods. It was all hillbillies. I mean, even though
Yeah.
they were modern people, as you would call, I mean, since the Civil War, we were becoming modern people. Even though your great grandparents worked out in the field all day and had a farm, they were still modern people. And but the modern people were already having a distance to their farm past. You would say that was already
Yes.
starting to happen. Modernism caused everybody to take a little distance to look at it, and so the hillbilly records, even though everybody's not conscious of that distance, hillbilly records are a hit, and there are people making money in the 20s selling 78 RPM 10-inch discs, shellac discs of hillbilly string music, old timey music. This is before 1948, before uh, what is it? It's a Bill Monroe's group. We actually call
Oh,
the Blue Ridge,
ah,
Blue Ridge
okay.
Boys. Yeah,
Maybe. Was it?
they were on a ridge, the Blue Ridge Boys. Yeah, isn't that it? I think so. Anyway, so you had that era. These things were already percolating out there, but it was more rustic. No one was looking to really sand the edges off the rustic delivery. In fact, that was some of the joy of recognizing that's
Bluegrass Boys.
yeah, yeah. But the
Duh. I
humor,
mean, it's Kentucky. That should have been.
yeah. Um,
Duh. All right.
the humor of a lot of that stuff from that era too is kind of like the good natured humor of it. And here aren't we a bunch of hicks, but we're having a good time and in life wonderful.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, here, let's while we're here, because I do want to hit this. You tell me, is bluegrass country, or is it at the very least a heritage form of
oh,
music?
it seems to me like it's just a matter of mutation from people playing music over time.
Okay.
That you go from, in my mind, you go from um, old time music, string music, into bluegrass and country, which are really percolating concurrently.
Yes.
It was
Okay.
out there before someone knew to call it something.
Well, so here, and I might be too technical on this. When I say bluegrass, I'm thinking that Bill Monroe basically he took mountain music
Hmm.
and he took a little bit of, maybe it's 2/3 mountain music and it's 1/3 country,
Hmm.
but then he took the chord progressions and he got them in shape to where they could be focused primarily on banjo and mandolin, and then he sped everything up by about 60 beats a minute.
Right, right. And I think in terms of it, bluegrass, it's country and mountain instead of country and western, or really it's mountain and country.
Right, and that's so it's one of those things. It's funny. I think a person could get me to go either way to say it's not country, but boy, it's if we're not going to put it in country, I don't know where else we're going to put it.
Yeah, I
So
mean the overlap is pretty considerable. There's more
yes,
overlap there than country and rock and roll, and there's a lot. I mean, there's plenty there,
yes.
but I mean it's almost they're what is it? What are the twins that don't look alike? What do you call that?
Oh, a fraternal
Yeah,
versus identical.
fraternal
Yeah.
twins. Yeah,
Okay.
they come from the same place, but they all look alike. So I think that's a good analogy for country and bluegrass.
Yes.
So, and that was another thing too, realizing the cultural and my realization of, I mean, from in my own life for country music was the realization that this is my people's music and that it
Hmm.
sounds familiar to me. There's always that blood memory aspect of things like, why does
Right.
this harken to me in some way? But it does. Even though
There is a
my dad didn't play a lot of that around a little bit around the house, but it was
yes.
mostly, the Beatles and the Who.
Yes. Well, and I hate citing this because I can't remember the name. I know it's on YouTube. I saw it near a decade ago. There is a documentary out there. I want to say it was made in the late 70s or the mid 80s. And it's talking about mountain music. And they got Johnny Cash on there. And at
Mm,
one point, he said that he's over in Ireland and he's hanging out with some local musicians getting ready for a show. And he's just running through just a random chord progression and
mm.
strumming a little bit. And they said, "Where'd you learn that?" And he said, "What are you talking about?" They said, That chord progression, that sound. Where'd you learn that?" And he said, "Son, this is what we've always been playing." And then they all started laughing because they said, "Well, that's the same stuff we're playing out here."
Yeah, that and the to me that's very pleasing to know that there's that continuity.
Yes. Yeah.
They're
Well,
like,
and that's what he's citing. He's like, we didn't know each other from Adam, and it's two different countries, and yet to think that somewhere out in the UK there's a kid that sounded just like me, and we're playing the same thing.
yeah, yeah. It is another country, but it's a country with a whole lot closer blood. It's your cousins. It's
Right.
fourth removed. It's not like going to Yugoslavia where you might find there's definitely musical commonality amongst European peoples for sure. But although, have you seen the thing recently of the African? What they're in Kenya, they're farmers, or they're got cattle farms. They're all there's a bunch of and they're all into American country music, and they all have like line dancing parties.
So one, no, I haven't seen it, but then two, it makes sense because once you're heavy into ag or some sort of subset, it is sort of like go where the people know your struggles and where you're accepted. So it doesn't
Yeah,
it doesn't surprise me that folks that are raising cattle in another part of the world can look at folks that are maybe the not truly the original cattlemen, but at least the original cowboys or whatever, and be like, yeah, that's my people.
yeah. The universal nature of the subject matter.
Yes. Yep. So Arthur jumps in. He says it felt like our music until around the early 2000s, in his opinion. The corporate machine went into turbo mode then, and I
Yeah,
think I think that's really close to the right timing, especially on mainstream country. And I think you can make the argument that Western, bluegrass has always been a thing. I think it's unique enough that commercial commercial doesn't really make heads or tails of it, so it can have its resurgences and it can have its downturns. But if you look at something like Western music, I think that went into hyperdrive there in the 90s for them to try and kill that scene and just disjoint country from its basis. And then yeah, especially like Arthur says here in the early 2000s, because I think part of and you were beating around this, and I think part of it too is that when we started divorcing ourselves from that element, from the farm, from the mountains, from the rural atmosphere, where also where it was something that a lot of these country songs, they're not. See, let me figure out how to put this properly. A lot of country artists are wonderfully proficient,
mhm.
but a song does not have to be a technical masterpiece to be a good country song.
Well, if anything, I'd say that much of the time, as far as studio recordings, a lot of great country music is fairly burdened with excessively precise music, or
Okay.
too much instrumentation. And because I was like thinking of this today, good listening to
Oh, within the sessions, you're saying once I got
yeah,
into, yeah,
yeah,
okay,
like
yep,
the everything on the Red Johnny Paycheck's greatest hits. So many of those songs are so overglobbed, or even a phenomenal song out of his catalog, the old violin.
yep,
It's got too many instruments on it. It's a great song. It's really
yep,
deep and really revealing and penetrating. But also it's like, oh, I really would have liked if it's been stripped down to about four instruments
yes,
and be much more not ragged, but just more like an unvarnished piece of wood. I think
yeah,
we improved all those. I think the rough hewness, but see now the reason for that is though is that with country music has always had been more comfortable from an entertainment background.
okay,
Unlike the beatniks who want to get real, man, it's got to be natural and it's got to be impulsive or immediate. Whereas with country, there is a more understanding. You're going to go down to the fairgrounds. You're going to play three sets,
yeah,
and
okay,
you're going to play at this time, and everybody's into order. And you're
yeah,
playing it. You're following a form. It took me again when I was younger to realize the point is the form. The point isn't to
yeah,
reinvent the
okay.
wheel or be David Bowie and come up with something every new album, a completely different persona. The point is your adherence to the forms. How much are you massaging and breathing more life into a form that you're a part of? Again, that's the continuity that you're a
Do
part
you
of the
know?
expression.
Do you know who Chris Knight is?
I know the name, but I can't remember what he does.
Oh, House of 90 Acres, Down the River,
Yeah.
um, yeah, Not Enough Rope, or it's just called Enough Rope. Anyway, so I went and saw him play at a bar several years ago,
Uh,
and one of the coolest things. So first off, it's just him and two other guitarists. Everybody's on acoustic, and that's all it is. Him and a couple of old buddies, and they're just playing guitars,
Mm.
and he's into one of his songs. I can't remember what it was, and all of a sudden, I didn't even hear. I don't know if he muted a string by accident or whatever it was that he did. Mid song, shit. It just stops the whole song. Son of a bitch. So I'm laughing, and they start the whole song and do the whole song over,
I can
and that
relate.
was it was interesting. Honestly, in some ways, that was my favorite part of the night, because I'm thinking, man, anybody else I've ever listened to, they would have just rolled on through.
Yeah.
But that was not enough. He whatever it did that took him off. Maybe he forgot a lyric. That might have been what it was. I don't know.
See, they have the singers that's from rock and roll, because if you screw up playing rock music, you're like, "What's rock and roll, baby?" So that's just how
Yeah.
it is, you know.
Yep.
But now you were saying earlier about music and lyrics,
Yep.
and my response to that is, well, it's not jazz, so it's both. But the lyrics, I think there's a huge thing that I've never that you just when you hear it talked about, it's probably snobbishly, but
Yep.
there's a huge thing about what lyrics reveal in country singers about the culture and the emotion and the life of men after World War II.
Yes.
Because
Yep.
every country singer is the quintessential contrarian man. He is not going to do what you want. He wears a rebel flag. He might have short hair on top and long hair on the bottom, but he is a restless person. He's
Yes.
not gonna submit. You know,
Well,
he's
it's that daggum David Allen Coe song. Which one is that? It's
you're not thinking of Johnny Patriot, the only hell my mama ever raised.
no. Oh, daggum it. See, this is the thing. We're gonna keep remembering all this music and not remember it precisely.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes when you're actually having it in front of people. Oh, that song. But
Yeah, yeah.
while you're looking for that, I'm just going to say, and the masculinity of it. The
Okay.
masculinity, I mean, because yeah, he wants to be, you know, the country singer dreams of being a cowboy, but he's a singer in a honky tonk. But but it's not aspirational. He is the guy. He is the rugged, Wrangler wearing, contrarian, hard drinking, you can't tell me what to do guy who doesn't want to listen to his woman telling him something stupid, but he's not going to tell her or you this, but in the song, he's going to express at different times either a lot of sentimentality about the girl or sentimentality about his life or his reflection on himself. And there's going to be a whole lot of things. And that's not like vulnerability, because he's never going to tell anybody. He's just going to put that in the song,
Yes.
because a normal man doesn't talk about that to anybody. He's only going to use that for art. You know, and
So
I say also that reflects. I say he's not going to say that to anybody, and he's just going to put it in his art. That's another reflection of how the the entertainment background of performance of country music gives the performer a little distance from his material. You know,
yeah.
he's not really expected to. In one way, his one thing there's certain aspects of expression he's not expected to be. But then on the flip side, I think it's just because of because it's a very firm expression of masculinity. But also, the country singer lives his art as much as John Lennon or David Bowie does, because he is that guy. You know, it's like Billy Joe
Yeah.
Saber with his fingers gone. I mean, he's the guy. He's not just a character. He really is that person.
Well,
And
that's
all these guys are those people, even though they might take that coat off some to a certain degree when they get off the stage. But it really is a manifestation of that person.
so. I'm going to read some lyrics from this one, and then I'm going to jump into a George Strait one, which I think is good example too. What you're saying. So David Allen Coe. This one's "You Never Even Called Me by My Name."
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is so you don't have to call me Waylon Jennings, and you don't have to call me Charlie Pride, and you don't have to call me Merle Haggard anymore, even though you're on my fighting side. And I'll hang around as long as you will let me, and I never minded standing in the rain. But you don't have to call me darling, darling. You never even call me by my name.
Mm-hmm.
And so sort of that aloofness. And the other one that I'm reminded of is Cheyenne by George Strait. You know, the whole idea, he's calling his girl, see what's going on, see how life is going. The girl's just tired. She is tired of his rodeos. She is tired of him having to get out there and do things, and so she's done. And so the cowboy wraps it up saying, well, that's fine. If I hurry, I can still make it to Cheyenne for that next rodeo.
Yeah, yeah. It's like they're he expressed the vulnerability is going to be expressed in the song, but like to the woman in the story, he's like, I got a bigger thing than you, sweetheart. So,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that's driving me. And that too is like, um, that's to me, that's like that. I would say that country music has been a refuge of masculinity where it's like not touched by feminism or race relations or anything else. It's where the guy is the guy. And it took me a long
Well,
time.
that's sort of a. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish.
It took me a long time because I wanted to play like artsy music when I was young to realize why the guys who liked that in high school liked it in the first place back in the 80s. Because it was
Mm-hmm.
like, it was the Wrangler dude, Now, but I always say, even in those days, it was like the funniest guys at my school were still the rednecks. They were the guys they did. The guys who were like the most fun were the ones who didn't care, and those guys cared the least. Whereas some of the
Yes.
cool people were a little too precious. But again, that's because that's my people and I relate to it. But I think you could pick apart a lot of songs and think of it as examples of masculinity in the feminist era, where he's really just what he couldn't say this. He really just rather punch the girl because she won't shut up. I mean, he wouldn't do it because he is chivalrous.
Sean Connery's is getting
Yeah,
in there.
because there's a strain of that with that guy. He's like, if you
Yeah.
don't knock it off, like
Yeah.
a real person might be tempted to say to someone.
Well, that's George Strait again. That's the daggum farts. The one where she finally takes off. He was like, "Well, I didn't see that one
Finally
coming."
got
Oh,
done with her.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
what was that one? Doggone it! See, it's gonna happen every time. I know because it's circling in my brain, and then I'm gonna forget it. But take this for where so much love was made. Doggone it!
we'll think of it in a minute.
I will. But
Um,
part of that too was that idea. I heard somebody say it this past week, and I was like, "Oh, that's putting words to things that I knew and I participated in, but I didn't recognize and I couldn't articulate." And it was this idea of that one of the great things of the military, and you'll get it sometimes in roughnecks and
mhm.
blue collar labor and all that too. But then especially in the military, is there's this chance for you to act in ways that are softer than you would act with anybody, even or maybe particularly with your girl, because that's a different situation. You need to be able to stay strong in the midst of that. But it's almost like when it's just men,
Right.
you
It's the
can you
brotherhood.
can you can let your guard down a little bit.
Right. Because in the company of the men, everybody knows their place. There's a hierarchy, and everybody knows what it's about. And the guys tend to be more cool with the hierarchy when it's understood. It's like, yeah, this
Yes.
is the thing, man. And you're like, then you're like handing a cup of coffee off to your bro because he's your bro. And that's an unspoken, but that gets expressed in some of these songs too. Is
Yes,
is
absolutely.
this brotherhood and the man's sense of being an anachronism, because the country singer aspires to the cowboy, and in some ways he really is the cowboy, but he's on the horse looking over the canyon and thinking about how the era of the late 19th century going west is over, and eras of later in the 20th century that were pioneering somewhere, they're over, and I'm just stuck out here in this honky
Right.
tonk, or I'm wishing I was on a horse. Which again,
Yes.
those are very man expressions of like, I just like to be out in the open in the woods and be left alone.
Yep. Well, and that's one where you start getting into like Dave Stamey and Red Steagall and that Western music in particular.
Yeah,
Well, I guess Don Edwards too, but that Western music where it's all gone.
yeah,
That's when they're blackpilling. But
yeah.
because
Well,
that
you
those
gotta look at
times,
the black pill if you're gonna go on living. You gotta look the black pill in the eye and be willing
right?
to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that George Strait song I was thinking of was "Give It Away."
And it's always like
Yeah.
going looking back. That's too a part of the thing I like looking back at Bob Wills. All the guys who would write songs about, like Merle, Bob Wills was the greatest. Or we
Yeah.
always talk reverently about Bob Wills in this house.
Yeah. So Witt jumps in, and he did not grow up on doing country. And actually, I'll dig into myself a little bit here in a second. But he says exclusively masculine company is clarifying. It's interesting to hear that detail as an essential aspect of country music. because he also said up earlier that oh, I don't see it, but he said that, oh, here it is. He said he's more of a beatnik guy, and so maybe that's why he never quite
Yeah,
caught on with
I
country.
had to purge myself of my beatnik influences. There are a lot of
Okay.
things the past few years I have purged myself of. And
Yes.
hey, beatnik, I'll tell you, one thing I purged myself of was Charles Bukowski.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll burn all of Charles Bukowski's, but I loved Post Office when I was 19. And after a certain point, I'm kind of like, this guy is a subversive. This guy is a
Yes.
county rat think. We missed the chance to string him up and all the rest of. I used to. This is another thing I realized, like, because I wanted to read when I was younger, and I would like there's these beatnik writers like Charles Bukowski or what was the guy on the road? What was it? With Jack Kerouac. I know I hated Jack Kerouac even back then because Bukowski made the joke about, well, he's more famous for dressing like a cowboy than he is for writing. But anyway, but I found like my friends who played music that did just that. Well, see, they read those books too. They didn't read anything else. See, I was trying to read other stuff like Shosenitz and other things, but they just read the stupid rock and roll books. So it was just
Yes.
what was the Gonzo journalism guy? What's his name? Shoot. Um,
When
uh,
is this Rolling Stone or which one is
Fear and
this?
Loathing, the Fear and Loathing guy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, again. Yeah,
Which
yeah.
one
I
is
know.
not in that, isn't it?
With-
All those guys. I felt all my rock music friends just read the same hipster beatnik books. They didn't read
right.
literature and loathing. Yeah,
Is it Terry
Hunter S.
Gilliam?
Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson.
That's what it is. Yeah, yeah.
So, but see, all those people they didn't read literature, and it's like you're surprised you're not directed at that, but a lot of your country guys read. They read novels, even if it's just reading, the most famous cowboy novels. That's still
Right.
over a lot of people. Reading
Well,
is elite in itself.
yep. And so whether it's Louis L'Amour or whether it's even Old Yeller, well, they probably weren't reading too much Steinbeck, but is
Or Treasure Island. They were reading stuff from the older
uh-huh.
classics that were boys stuff that were adventure books.
Right.
But there's more of that going on because the country ethos is the man. The country ethos is about the guy, and it's the guy's vision of the world that how he would like to see himself in it. He'd like to be like Bob Wills, but he's also the anachronistic cowboy on the horse with
Well, see, now
cutting down the forest.
this is super interesting for me as well because all right, so growing up, I hated country music. I thought it was just the most performative and fake style of music out there. And I was rock. I thought rock
Yeah.
was all there was. Well,
Yeah.
that and metal. But so we're doing that. Now having said that, the one person in my life who loved country music was my maternal grandmother. And she was just done. She lived on the third corner of the brickyard of the Indy 500 Speedway,
Oh wow.
and she had two things in her house, and they were both black and white. She had way too many Holstein cattle, porcelain, and paintings, and just little figurines of Holstein cattle. And then the other one was checkered flags all around her house. It was NASCAR and cattle, then a little bit of F1 mixed in there. And all she ever listened to was country music. So I would have thought even a half hour ago when we first started talking that the reason she liked country music is just sort of this call of the land and this going back to where she came from. But now that I'm thinking about it, I mean her one and only or, or her topmost, I shouldn't say her one and only, but her topmost was Randy Travis.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I mean, George Strait and Travis Tritt, and she didn't do too much Garth Brooks, but they were all in there in that mix. And now that you're saying all this, it's funny to me to think because there's some other things in her life too that I'm not going to dox here on the internet, but that idea of masculinity and the presentation of masculinity, I wonder how much that was playing into
I'm
her
sure
life
it's
and
attractive for women because
yeah,
it's the decisive man. I mean, ain't no faggot playing country music, I mean, it's a decisive man. I mean, he's
right.
a contrarian. She's gonna have to adapt herself to him, and women don't know that they love to adapt themselves until they have to, and then they just want to adapt. They just want to please you, and
So
um, it's
here's one too, and I'm
it's.
thinking,
Go ahead.
go for it.
I was going to say, so they're a beacon to the rest of us. The country singer, the character, whether it's a caricature or the persona he projects, that's a beacon for the rest of us. That's the guy. That's a man's man, and you want to be like that guy, And it's okay, and it may be more aspirational than anything, but at least you got a clear picture to shoot at. That's what these guys have done for us, and it's in the culture. It's there.
Well, that's a funny thought because I'm thinking even clean cut. If you go with somebody like Alan Jackson, who doesn't want to be Alan Jackson?
He's the guy everybody likes. There's not a lot of pressure on him to have to conform himself to everybody else, and people still like him. Right. It's almost like being a popular guy at school, but it's like you kind of got an edge.
Yep. Yeah,
that's the other thing about the country singer, because he's got to have an edge because he's a contrary guy. He's cranky. He might, black your eye, bust your nose if you cross him the wrong way.
All right. So here's one about media then. Did you ever see that? It's another thing I'm going to forget the name of, but it's the one with Jeff Bridges and Maggie Gyllenhaal.
What's that called?
Yeah.
I've seen probably bits of it. My purging of myself also is not dropping, getting like I'm not watching movies and just fed up with movies.
Okay, fair enough.
Although I love them, I love art, I love communication, I love all those things. But God, so much of it after a certain point, it's just like exhausting.
Fair enough. Yeah, this one was duck on it. Crazy Heart. That's the one.
Crazy Heart. I never saw it. I never
saw
heard of it, but I don't. I hadn't read the synopsis on Wikipedia, which is more my at this point. Like, I'll just go read about it.
Yeah. Well, I won't worry about it then. I was just curious how you thought that portrayed the country man, because it seemed like some of the beats were being hit, but then I was going to be like, well, maybe it was subversive, and I was too ignorant to catch it. So
some of it was later on. I appreciate Middleton Whitaker enjoying the comment about women adapting themselves. It's true.
All right. Well, fair enough. All right. So we've made the argument then that country music is ours. It came out in interesting. Okay, sorry. Arthur took me off guard. He said Pure Country was a good movie, and that's my hill to die on.
I remember it Pure Country. I never saw it.
Okay.
That was so. Let me tell you, that's Arthur. I'm glad you said that about Pure Country. What year did that come out?
Looks like 1992.
Okay, that's perfect. So one of my things, because I want to play music, I also made it my business to always be at the college radio station or to be working at a record store. So I was working in 1993 at a record store, record quotations, in the mall. I was working, and it was CDs and cassette tapes by that point. So, and it was after closing, and I was putting the tapes back up, and I was putting back in our store's most stolen cassette tape, Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Oh Lord!
And I was holding. I just happened to find myself, and I'm holding the double cassette thing of Hank Williams Jr.'s Greatest Hits, the yellow one that came out on Polygram. If anybody remembers that, anyway, because that's the good one. That's your starter.
Okay.
I'm looking at those now. I'm already becoming politically aware at this point. I realize that certain minorities are pumped up by the government and by media, and they get a lot of slack, whereas some other majorities get nothing already in 1993. They're looked down upon. And so I looked at Bone and I looked at Hank, and I thought, so who is the most hated by people, hip hop or nasal twang? And I thought, nasal twang. Everybody hates nasal twang. They'll make allowances for hip hop. There are none for Hank. So I guess it's beginning of white consciousness, but it really is.
Right.
But and so that I'm like, I looked at it and like, okay, I'm on the side of nasal twang because that's where my people come from, and they're all Southerners, and they're all nice, and they're all hard working. They all work with most of them work with their hands. Some of them don't, but they're like, that's my people, and I'm throwing my lot in with the music that I readily recognize. I had made a conscious decision. So after that, it's cool. I'm ready for this. And then I would say on top of that is we talk about, I see now country music in the ascendancy, even though you might not see it on every sign, but I feel like everything people are kind of shed because so much of the art stuff has been subversive for so many years. Particularly being Gen Xer, I see so much of it now. It's like, it just irritates me that I sat there, like old TV shows like MASH, it's like you just preached at all your whole friggin' life. That country is the thing that's in the ascendancy because The people of the country are the thing that's in the ascendancy, regardless of what's happening. And I
Yes.
would say that even though they're not a country band, but that Leonard Skinner is because their symbol is a rebel flag, that is the ascendant symbol of the right. I mean, because it's not country, but it's totally. I mean, they cut their teeth on country. And I would
Yes.
say that
Well, it's
Ronnie,
funny to
go ahead.
go. So I'm thinking it's funny too because we're at a point in time right now where let me be very careful for my southern for my legitimate Confederates. But we're at a point in our nation's history where you could be driving through Toledo and see more of Lee's battle flag than you see in Asheville, North Carolina.
That's a consistent thing because all throughout the post Civil War era of the 19th century, you see rebel flags as a symbol of anti-government sentiment.
Right.
And that's why it's still hate. That's why this suddenly what was it 2015? It suddenly got banned for no reason off of you can buy a rebel flag off Amazon or whatever.
Buy not
Yeah,
a Southern Belle, but buy an outsider. Let's be real about who Nikki Haley is.
yeah, exactly. So
So a Republican,
who's the biggest problem for the right? The conservative.
Yes.
Always. But I was going to say about Ronnie Van Zant. Ronnie Van Zant's his voice, not his singing voice, his writer's voice.
Mm.
He is the heir to Hank Williams.
Okay.
He's not as rustic as Hank Williams, but he's the everyman. I mean, I don't know every country singer is an everyman, but he particularly hits something that I have not been able to quite put my finger on. Why it feels like it hits in a particular way. Why it seems like it is so broadly understood by even people in the rock audience.
Yeah.
Even though they are also like they're cut from country music. I mean, they're all uber masculine. They get in the fights, they get in the brawls. Their whole identity is being restless and rowdy.
There are reasons. Seeing it starts getting sticky, right? Because if you go back to the English, you've got Iron Maiden over there, but there's a reason why somebody like Axl Rose is going to have more in common with Hank Williams and with Merle Haggard than he is with Dagon Bruce Dickinson.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's because he with that group climbed so high and was exploited by the system to varying degrees, which I'm sure.
And it could just be some of Axel's dickishness, but
it could be just mental balance. I mean, he's a little overly rowdy, but
yeah.
But now that's also the American nature. We rebelled against the British. We rebelled against the Yankees. There's all this. It's supposed to be the quintessential American is a restless. We are not status quo. That's what that means. The rebel thing is we are not, even though we are so globally the status quo, it's disturbing.
Well, and it's funny too because you have to find a way to thread this needle, and that's why the American is simultaneously the cowboy, but it's also simultaneously the frontier family. Right, and so that they go almost hand in hand, and you've got the juvenile, and then you've got the adult. So the juvenile and the cowboy, and then the adult expression in the frontier family. But then once you've reached the point where there is no more terra incognita, where the horizon has been conquered, what next? And I think maybe that's the great question of where the Americans go now. And the easy answer is, well, we go to space, but
or we have to fight a proto South African situation. Anyway, let me just blackpill everybody here in the middle of country music. Well, I'm the Boer. You don't know what that is?
Well, but sure. I mean, there's reasons why you can play the Rhodesian national anthem and folks are going to smile.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's cousins from the same budget from the same DNA.
Right.
There's something else here I was trying to make sure that I hit, and I'm going through my.
And Arthur's 100% correct. Nimrata Haley.
Oh, yeah. That was my wife's favorite term to use on her.
Yes.
And my daughter. Let's see. The chemistry. Okay. I said all that. So those are, and I will also say too, I was sparked. I've started and I didn't finish it. It was Sandbach he posted something last summer, not to give him a hard time because I don't know him, but he was going some list of the great
I love him.
quintessential
He's a friend of the show. He was on here talking about military music several months ago.
he was some list of the quintessential rock bands, if I can spit that out. And I was like, are you reading Rolling Stone? How old are you? It's like the Ramones, the Grateful Dead. That's why I was like, Leonard Skinner is the ascendant rock band. They are the symbol of what we're about. You're like, and you must bow the knee to the ascendancy of Americana country music and all that it encompasses, because that's the thing that's on the rise. And I was ready to write an article on it and rabble rouse. This is our music and it symbolizes the Volk.
Well, and it's a funny thing too, because the question there is Leonard Skinner is arguably
the most
and never.
underrated.
I'm not. I was gonna. Oh, they're not underrated. Come on.
But I go places and talk to people. They act like they've never heard the songs aside from the two famous ones.
What, Simple Man and Freebird?
Freebird and Sweet Home.
Oh, so Sweet Home is funny because Sweet Home is.
I'll stand by that. I've never heard people gush about the compositional aspect, about the playing, about what I just said about Ronnie Van Zant as the everyman and what he hits as far as the lyric. I never hear anybody talk about them in any depth except I like it. I like this got 3 guitars, or I've never heard anybody in the music establishment. I mean, they liked them, and Southern rock was popular in the early 70s with people in general, but it generally it turned pretty quick to be like a dirty redneck taste.
I had a sergeant when I was in, and I was talking one day, and I said, "Man, Tuesday's Gone is just that is one tight song." I said, "But it's a bit of a sleeper." And he looked at me and he's like, "You dumbass!" He said, "Every Skynyrd song is a hit." And I was like, "Well, I mean," and he's like, "Nope, every Skynyrd song is a hit." And I just thought it was funny, but it probably helped that he was from Texas and his name was Austin. So
yeah,
it was in his blood.
Baby, I need you. Baby, I need you. Which sounds like Free the way they constructed it. Or I'm on the hunt. All those, there's still songs, there's still album cuts that everybody doesn't acknowledge.
Right.
But it's one of those it's the most popular and like least regarded by people. It's the people again. It's the people's music. It's not anybody in media.
Okay, so maybe that's a fair point. Yeah, that were they. So you grew up around that. I mean, were they critical darlings at the time? Because they were filling stadiums.
They were popular. The critical darling is not Iggy Pop is a critical darling, and then Bowie. Okay. So those people didn't know around how bad their new album was. But Skynyrd, on the other hand, was respected and people liked it. And here's my reading Robert Christgau's reviews. He was like the famous reviewer for like Rolling Stone and a bunch of stuff. He always gave them A's and said and talked enthusiastic with the things that I would think about Ronnie, about the way they come across. So their songs are economical. They're not long jams. Everything has a purpose. It's all thought out in the songs. Even if it's a long song, every segment is defined, and it builds up. It intentionally builds up momentum and builds up dynamics. And so it's not like side 3 of the Fillmore by the Almonds where it's a jam, even though there's a lot of complexity in their jams. But right. there's not like where they're treading for 4 bars till they get to the next part. Everything is very concise in their composition. There's nothing wasted. It's not a Skynyrd song where you got wasted composition. Everything's very tight and I mean composition. I mean like notes, chords, and the way it connects together from verse to chorus to bridge, solo bit. Even when they're soloing over a progression that you've already heard, they still keep it within a certain parameter where it doesn't get boring.
Okay,
they're really good with managing people's attention spans.
Don't cuss me out on this. I'm feeling this out. These are shower thoughts, right? So maybe I shouldn't be going with this on stream, but I wonder if Lynyrd Skynyrd is sort of no, because they were beforehand. So let me swap that. If Boston is the Yankee cognate of Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Well, they're not as loose as Lynyrd Skynyrd, even though I said all that about tight composition.
That's
looseness about and they had the greater sense of persona and personality to Skynyrd much more than I do with Boston.
Okay.
Boston, Tom's a great guitar player and everything. But I hear Skinner.
Brad Delp's singing is, I mean, it's unbelievable. And then I would make the argument that that lick in foreplay
Mm.
at the roughly 3 minute 30 second, that lick, those 6 notes or whatever it is just might be the best that's ever been written.
Honestly, Boston was always a band out of that era. It's like by the time you got into the late 70s, I was kind
Yes.
of like not as enthusiastic. Like Boston, I know that they're great and I know the songs are good, but it was I always joked that I would sing the lyrics to which is song. I don't want to really hear a Boston song right now. Like they're good, but I just don't want to hear that right now.
Okay.
You know, there are a lot of groups you're like they're good, but
Yeah.
I'm
All right.
not what I'm
Well,
looking for.
see, and that's fair too. It's funny how music hits you, but right, because I started listening to country maybe the year I graduated high school, and so I did that, and then some of my favorite country artists. Well, so like Chris Knight's one of my favorite, and that's dude. That's when I started working horses and learning how to drive horses and
Mm.
all that stuff.
And
And
you
I'm
connected
saying,
the vibe there, right? It's
right, right. And so when I think of Boston,
the
I did
feeling.
not grow up listening to Boston, but I heard Boston that first. That was my Iraq workup. It was listening to Boston, and that was just like once the day was over or on the weekend when I was buying and nobody was there yelling at me or whatever else. It was like, oh, life is good. Yep. So maybe it is. It's just what you were
I hear you.
doing when you were dealing with certain bands. It clouds all your thoughts.
Oh yeah, now that the point of life stuff, and there's that's huge because that kind of melds you to certain. That's how you like you hear a song and it takes you back to X time
Yes.
or place,
Yeah.
and that's the best thing that a writer, someone who makes music or writes music, that
Mm-hmm.
say that people heard this and it took them back to a certain time and place. But I say that's but even then, like the country singer is trying to transport you to the place that they're talking about because again, and it's the
Right.
all those things we were talking about earlier about the character of the singer or what he projects as a man.
And I think that's honestly too. I think that's part of the reason where we can get into the rockabilly, and again, Elvis, Johnny Cash, Johnny Horton. What's his name? Daggum, Tennessee Ernie Ford, right? Like
Yeah,
these are the popular guys that maybe they're not country, but what they're singing about, we all, if we don't directly relate, we know from the stories from our grandparents and we know from the prior generations that were here how they related to those moments and to those songs. And then it I think that's why that overlap of like it's still ours. It's still, if it's not country in tone and sound and lyric, it still is in spirit. It's
yeah.
still, that's who we were and that's who we are.
I think that like if you think the biggest '50s, I say biggest, one of the most noteworthy rockabilly songs from the '50s, I'm thinking like "Bebop by Gene Vincent, which is like one of my all-time favorites. The distinction between that and country is I think the raucousness that they're like trying to be a little wilder than a country song. Because you're shouting a lot and jumping around, and the more jazz-like progression of a song like that, where on Bebop the bass is definitely walking the song along, and it's simple chording. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like Stray Cats would mind that big time later in the '80s. But Bebop by him or who's the guy that did Train Kept a Rolling, did the that later famous
Now I think it's CCR and Proud Mary. So
yeah. Train Kept Rolling, famously done by Aerosmith in the '70s, but originally it was Johnny Burnett
okay.
did the version that was a hit in the '50s. That was covered later by the Yardbirds and then by Aerosmith. But I think again, it's like it's country, but they're trying to be wilder just in the
Yes.
performance. And like that song has a fuzz tone on the guitar solo, and those things I liked a lot. That stuff was significant to me when I found those songs either on compilation records that my relatives had, or like started finding old 45s later, 7-inch vinyl records that were produced in the era. But the obvious kinship to country is very plain. But like I said, the rockabilly guys are just trying to be a little wilder. And speaking of a someone who doesn't always get acknowledgement from a lot of people in country is Jerry Lee Lewis's country records.
Yes. Oh, you're okay. Yes. Finish this because yeah.
Yeah, he's a. I mean, just across the board, I didn't realize how good those were only until recent years. Now, well, again, in the record store era, my wife and I were dating. He did an album that came out there, and at that point, if Jerry Lee Lewis does a studio album in 1993, I mean, it's just he's a songster. He's like Robert Johnson, those guys back in the 20s, where their whole thing was like they had a repertoire of 100 songs, and they could knock those suckers out. And that's the thing about Jerry Lee Lewis. He could pull these songs out of his backside at any moment and play them with the greatest conviction. And they said that when they'd have recording studios with him when he was just a little older, he'd be like, Jerry Lee, you want to do that song again? He said, why? I just played it.
Yep. So it's hilarious to me too, because I want to make sure I brought this up tonight. If somebody's jumping in, they're like, man, how do you even, this is such a dense nut to crack to some degree, or at the very least, it's such a wide ocean. Where do you even jump in at? And it's funny to me because I'm thinking, well, just go to George Jones and listen to Who's Going to Fill Their Shoes. Because if you start with that, you are going to build such a foundation on what rock is. And when you started talking about Jerry Lee Lewis, I was laughing to myself because in that song, George Jones is saying about blue suede shoes and Elvis. Much too soon he left this world in tears. They tore up the 50s, old Jerry Lee and Charlie. And Go Cat Go still echoes through the years. That song, like already there was this question of what is country and where do we go from here? What is it that we're capturing? And man,
It's pretty.
But I'm also just partial to George Jones. I couldn't even tell you why.
Well, the Columbia super hits of George Jones, the like dark brown color, that's your essential right there, because that's all his big songs. Right. And I'll teach you that's the distinction between I grew up with the rock era with album cuts, bands that not only had great hits but then had great album cuts that were totally worth your attention, like Hendrix, so or Aerosmith or Zeppelin, that had a lot, not just a hit song but an album worth of songs. With country, the point is the big song, and the bigger the big song is, the better, because that's like they're going for the most satisfying lick, which is the mega overarching the great song. So see, they're like, it's like singles, it's like R&B and rock music. There's albums and there's singles. And initially country was a singles market because it's the hit song. They're not doing. You're not looking for their B-side. You don't care about that. You want the big song, and they want to give you the big song. So it's almost like the old show tunes where you're like, we write a big song that everybody's going to love and it's going to resonate with people. And they're going to be like, and back in those days, like in the 50s and 60s, if a guy had one hit on the country charts, he can play the circuit for the rest of his life. People would still come out and hear that one song. Yeah. So
exactly.
Thank you. Yeah.
So it's Arthur put up, he said, Panda's favorite song is Gone Country by Alan Jackson, I bet. Now, I will say no, that is not remotely my favorite country song. However, I do like it, and I told Jack I wasn't going to reference this tonight, but I'm going to just now because Arthur made me think of it. So I did write several months ago that nearly 30 years after Green Acres premiered, Alan Jackson would record Gone Country and release it in 1994. Written by Bob McDill, the song is a catchy critique of what Nashville had finally achieved. Pop with a whatever. I can't pronounce that word, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I can't see it.
Kitschy or kitschy.
Kitschy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those words that I can't pronounce. So now that I made myself look like an idiot.
It'll be in your head now.
What's that?
The wrong pronunciation will be in your head for the rest of your life now.
Yeah, right. But no, I do. That song always makes me just shake my head because we're going through all of that right now, whether it's Beyonce or Post Malone or anybody else.
We're going through the Post Malone, the pre Malone, the mid Malone.
We're getting our eschatology from our country and our country. All right.
Hey, do you know? Have you ever watched the Otis Gibbs on YouTube? He's a songwriter and sometimes session musician for people. He lives up in Indiana, but he's down in Nashville a lot. And he's always like, "Hey, friends, this is Otis Gibbs." Okay. And he'll have all these different contemporary sidemen who play in country bands or play with rock bands that are session people. And he had, speaking of Jerry Lee Lewis, so he's had a guy that played a long time with Marty Stewart. And he said, so Marty told me that one time he decided he wanted to play the fiddle. and that he wasn't very good at it. But what he's going to do, he's going to talk Johnny Cash into letting him join his band so he could work on his fiddle playing. He said so.
Wow.
He auditioned for this is years ago, back in the 80s.
Yes. All
So
right.
he went and auditioned and was going on the tour with Johnny to play fiddle for him. He's like, and we played in Paris, and Jerry Lee Lewis opened for us, and they say everybody called Jerry Lee Lewis Unc.
Now, one like this, I'm wondering, when you say Paris, are you talking Paris, France, or Paris, Kentucky?
Paris, France.
All right.
Paris, France. So Marty's got his fiddle, and it's Jerry Lee's birthday. He said they hung out with Jerry Lee, and Jerry Lee's talking about looking up at the light in the ceiling and how much it annoys him. He's like, he's like, Jerry Lee would just say anything. He's like, if I had my pistol, I'd shoot that light out. It's just off the wall stuff you couldn't predict. Yes. And never mind that, of course, he blew the house down when he played because he's just playing the song, but it's a force to be reckoned with. Well, he said, well, Marty said, I went back to my hotel room with my fiddle and went to bed. I remember that was Jerry Lee's birthday. I got a knock on my door at 2 a.m. He opens it up. There's Unc, covered from head to toe in birthday cake. Oh. He says, let me see your fiddle, son. What did I do? Well, if Unc asks you for your fiddle, you give it to him.
Yes.
And he gave it to him. He said, I never saw that fiddle again. And that's the end of the story.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Hey, so Midwood jumps in and he says, does Aerosmith qualify as country? He
Absolutely
says, was that?
No. Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
It's rock and roll, baby.
Yes.
They're faux Rolling Stones, but they're really, really good at it.
Okay. Now the way, okay. So this is interesting. Okay. So I want to do, excuse me. Now that we went down this road, I want to do a couple of these. Okay. See if we can tease this out a little bit. All right. What about Creed?
I appreciate the current atmosphere, enjoyment of Creed. I could not stand that band when it came out. Because again, this was should have been Dead on a Sunday. What year?
97? 90, okay.
That song comes out and I hear the guy and I'm like, why are we doing this in 1997? This thing's already played out.
Because it was still real, man.
I don't know. No, but I don't want to try all the bros that I like who enjoy Creed. This one I'm like, enjoy the Creed, it's fine.
I went and saw him in concert last year. I love him.
I cannot. And then what was that huge hit they had? Eyes Wide Open. What was it?
Yeah, with Eyes Wide Open. That was one.
Eyes and Arms Wide Open. It was omnipresent. And I couldn't. My life is generally like whatever is mass media explosion is happening when it was still concentrated back, not so far back. Me trying to escape from it because even like the Nirvana Pearl Jam explosion. I was aware of those bands before they came out because it was my job to know everything. Was my joke. Like I got the first Nirvana record at the radio station, the Sub Pop one. So my friends, we already knew about this. But when they blew up, I got so I like Nirvana. I don't ever want to hear them again. Or like when Pearl Jam blew up after the album had been out for a year. And Alive was on MTV. At MTV, it would play the same songs over and over. And I thought I was going to vomit if I had to hear Alive one more time, even though I like those songs. But, if you have it shoved down your throat, it's not the thing you chose to play 16 times a day. You don't want to hear it. So even stuff you like, you can get fed up with.
Yeah.
Creed was not like that for me. But
I love Creed.
out of that era. But again, and considering who all I hear like joking about how much they love it, I'm like, guys, I'm willing to make allowances,
Rock or country though?
Well, I grew up on so much rock, but I'm so digging more into country and
No, I mean Creed, were they rock or country?
Oh, they're definitely rock.
Well, that's what I would say.
They don't have the sensibility or the touch for country.
Now, what about
country is a touch?
Okay,
you can't make bar chords and saw like the Ramones. Okay. I mean, and play country. That's not a thing. You have to have a bit of finesse.
Okay, I've got one that I think is going to be clear, and then I've got one that, if you look at his early discography, might be a little iffy. Okay, so here's the easy one: Bryan Adams. rock or country?
I never liked Bryan Adams either.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
What was the best song? It Cuts Like a Knife, which is like what his first or second hit in the United States, and I was
Right.
15. It was on MTV.
Okay.
That's how old I am. That's it.
Yeah.
The rest of it was like, no, I don't know. I want the Robin Hood song. I don't want any. Yeah, and then
Right. Okay.
he's a guy who, like, the bigger he got, the more orchestrated his songs became and less loose, which I would prefer loose than. I mean, orchestrated is in like they feel like they're really plotted out, and I don't know if that's just because the production style,
Yes.
or just that like it's like too much thought went into it. It's like, how about something a little looser, a little that feels more organic or more reflexive. I know, like, for example, that quality that I'm talking about, the Rolling Stones
So,
have it. Like, they'll play in the studio
yeah.
for a year to make it sound like that it was reflective when it was a lot of work.
Yeah. So, and that was interesting when you drew that distinction between Skinnerd and Boston. And that Skinnerd was tight, but they were loose.
Right.
That was
And I think
interesting.
that reflects their personalities too, because they were
Sure.
also kind of wild.
Okay.
And I know Boston had their moments too, but it was a different thing. It's a
But
different.
would you call was Skinner rock or country? Or
They're kind
yes?
they're rock with a capital R, but it's like underneath their water. There's an underground lake, and it's country
Okay.
underneath the ground that Skinner is on.
Okay. So here's one that I think maybe it won't sound as clever to you as it does to me, but I think it might be a good one. John Cougar, not Mellencamp. I'm specifically talking about John Cougar. Yep. So American Fool, Blood on the Scarecrow, Pink Houses. Is that rock or is it country or is it something different?
Pink Houses is like Stonesy. I mean, some of that stuff from what's the Lonely Town?
Yeah, that's the one I kind of have to throw in the mix there. Okay, fine. Take the daggum Blood on the Scarecrow. But see, I didn't want it
the
to be
Stones love country. I mean, they're huge.
okay.
They wrote Honky Tonk Women. They're trying to make it sound like the guy I was trying to think of earlier that I said my grandfather played like. Hang on, and I'll find that because we need that reference here.
Okay.
T for Texas. Jimmy Rogers. It's supposed to feel like the Jimmy Rogers song. T for Texas. That all these Georgia women got me drinking turpentine.
Okay.
So Honky Tonk Women they're trying to make it sound like an old song, and I thought they did a pretty bang up job on that one.
Mm-hmm.
But so they love country, and like Keith is a huge Merle Haggard fan.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a bunch of those guys. You're like, Ringo Starr is a huge guy. He like went on tour with with Waylon Jennings back in like 75, 76, just hanging out on his tour bus with him.
Yes, all right.
Why didn't you make a record with him? Well, Ringo was coked up that year, but
well, I was thinking earlier when I was thinking about the Highwaymen when we were talking about how there's a little bit more precision, a little less jam.
Yeah.
To the countryside, and
it's is it the country version of the traveling predecessor to the Traveling Wilburys?
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of which, what did we say? The Highwaymen. What was I about to say about that? It was something completely vital to us. What did we say just before? They'll have to.
I was asking about John Cougar, not John Mellencamp, but John Cougar. And then
what are things? Okay, now I'm going to have to say things I like, because I'm like way off the charts here. What were like big records for me? And not when I was a child either. I like Dad had all those Beatle records and 70s Beatle solo records around our house, which I have like more.
Well, and for full reference, not every artist I was mentioning just now, I wasn't saying I liked them. I was just trying to sort of tease out that American side.
You're on the hook now as liking them all, so I'm sorry, but that's on your
doggone it. No, that's not.
What was I remember. This is another funny thing about the time. It was like I was 15 and I discovered the Clash.
Okay.
And so this is 1985. I'm just dating myself here. But here's the thing. There's a new Clash record coming out. However, it's the worst one. Cut the crap. Where it's like they got a like fake drums and synthesizer, and then they disavowed it after. It's like only 10 members left. The manager wrote all the music. they fired the guitar player who would normally write all their music, and the man. So I'm like, well, what could go wrong here? Well, I was like, dang it, this group is falling apart, and I finally get a new record, and it's horrible, and I just kept it and just played it until now I have a perverse love for this horrible record.
Right. Because it was a moment.
Yeah, well, it's a forced moment, but because I paid my own money for it.
Right. Well, that was the thing, right? Back before there was streaming,
it's
you would
pre-internet. News traveled slow back then. I already got it, and then everybody said it was terrible. No, I already bought it.
Exactly. You get it the day it comes out, and you're like, man, I don't know about this.
There are a couple of those where you back in those days, that's like my wife and I would joke. It's like back in those days, you're like, you had a Rolling Stone article or Spin, and did it look cool? And I really want to right. And you're flipping the coin. I don't know how's it going to turn out.
Well, it was like, so in my mind, there was almost this inverse relationship, like with Creed. The worse their cover looked, the better the album was.
Right, because I remember you go in the record store, you look at the tape or records, and like the cover looked really great. So it's like, surely the record is great.
Yes.
No, actually, that was the strongest thing in the package was the cover.
Right.
That was always like, oh, come on.
Yep. But okay, here's one for you. What about the band?
Oh, they're awesome.
Are they country or are they rock?
They're Canadian.
Okay. That was deftly done. That was okay. Touche. Oh, that's funny. Well, see, now
though, even their lamer stuff later on is still good. Although my wife says it starts to sound like the Muppets. My wife and I talk about music a lot, so I normally don't reference my wife on streams, but she's the critic.
Yes, it's fun.
But this is the only time I'm the happy guy and someone else is a critic. Normally, I'm the critic.
Okay. Well, but that brings up something funny that we were talking about way back towards the beginning of this, is that there was this sound that could be traced to the UK that was coming through in so much of this music. So then it's not that bizarre that Australia has a country music scene, that Canada has a huge country music scene.
But here's a distinction with the Canadian country scene, is it doesn't have the class awareness that American country is. Not it might be working class music in Canada, but here it's like it's working class. It's redneck. I mean, it's looked down upon because the people that make it are a distinct class and they're separate from another. Whereas that divide in Canada, I think, with country music is the same, because they look at
interesting.
What's the famous song Gordon Lightfoot, and the same guys they do everything else. The famous Canadian songwriter. With Americans, I don't know what it is with that. I think it's because of all our other divisions. Okay. With country, you feel the class distinction a lot harder, bro, because we're thinking about it, and it's under the veil of everything else. I'm a working man. No, I don't have a college degree, and I don't work at a university, and I don't care what they say, because I'm out here. I wish I was on a horse out in the canyon somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny too. I'm just thinking those same illusions too they're coming through in Styx. They're coming through in arena rock, and there is just that the 20th century, right?
From is where I moved out to.
Okay, but yeah, it's funny thinking my perception of the 20th century and my participation in the music of the 20th century is always I think it's probably like this weird foreign thing that any of those bands, they had no conception of what it was going to be like for a 21st century kid to go back and check this stuff out, because I don't even know that we can understand. I mean, and you could make that same argument with like Tennessee Ernie Ford when he's doing 16 tons or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right? Like that. It's a world that we don't really understand. Yeah. We have the stories that were passed down.
What's going to be, I joke with some of my friends and say, I've had to kind of drop some of my, because, Gen X or time is starting to kind of go by, having to drop some of these references. Cause it's like, to younger people, it's just like I'm talking about vaudevillians,
Yes.
Like he was the greatest name in the world at the time. He was, and people are like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what the Velvet Underground is.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I just have to drop a lot of that. Just like I got, it's the meme of the of the raven trying to learn new material.
Okay. I like it. I
Uh,
like it.
I, it's here's another thing. I had this perception that some past artists who have already passed away in country have been slow burners in the past 10, 15 years. And I have to,
Ooh,
on,
okay.
on air, thanks to Reform Bocephus, who is the one that has me continually listening to um, David Allen Coe and Johnny
Uh-huh.
Paycheck,
Okay.
and to a lesser extent, Billy Joe Schaefer. I feel like these are guys who were like second tier in their day. They weren't, the biggest, and they were kind of, they were kind of fringy because they, kind of wild guys. I mean, Johnny Paycheck killed the guy by accident, and then there's David Allen Coe just as a guy, and Billy Joe.
From Ohio.
Yeah, not as Billy Joe, not as wild in some sense, but he was out there too. But
Yeah.
their songwriting, it's like there's an element of their songs that has resonated, particularly like I was talking about Johnny Paycheck and the old violin.
Yeah.
Like the song, this is after he's got out of prison, and he only lived to be 64, and I think he wrote the song like 4 or 5 years before he died. But like the song is like, I'm like the old violin. I've given the best in all of my life to music, and now my life is over. And that's a pretty heavy statement
Right.
for to write about. And that makes me think, to a lesser degree, it's a different emotional territory of David Allen Coe's. I still like the old ways. I like the old songs.
It is interesting to think that there's a group of, and we haven't even touched on Red Dirt. So we haven't talked like Robert Earl Keen, Cody Canada, or any of those guys.
Yeah.
But there is a scene within country of guys who never make it.
Mm-hmm. But
they make enough to pay the bills and to stay on the road.
It seems like I saw Robert Earl Keen's name on all over things. How many songs of his got covered?
No. So Robert Earl Keen did it. I was just thinking though that Red Dirt is one area that we haven't even touched on, and that just got me thinking that there's these subsections of country.
Uh-huh.
And then there's also, you're talking about the second tier artists and stuff. There are guys who travel the nation for decades and they never have a hit. They never cross over.
Yeah.
That is a crazy thing. I mean, I imagine the same thing happens in rap and some other stuff, but I don't follow that, so I don't know.
Yeah. I don't. There are a lot of, with music, there's always, particularly now that everything is so stratified and fragmented because of the internet, and that you don't have cohesive media outlets pumping this, like back in the day, which is ultimately for the best, I'm sure, but we don't have the brainwash going. But there's so many strata now, it's hard for me to keep up. And I kind of,
right.
At a certain point, I got kind of tired of trying to find out what was going on, because my point on like with the sort of like indie alt rock stuff from like the 20 teens is starting to realize, hey, they're only female singers now. What is going on here? Why are there no guys singing?
Well, that's so sorry. Actually, go ahead. Finish.
And that's part and parcel of the attitude of everything. The feminists, it's all women can do it. Can't any guys sing anymore? It's all the women. And I'm like, well, I'm not a woman. I don't want to hear one. I want to hear a guy talk to me.
Yep.
And what else was it? Insane genre misidentification. All these indie bands are like, say that they're experimental. I'm like, really? You just sound like a garage band. There's nothing experimental about that.
Okay.
Or who was there's the shoegaze band, but everybody, they're black metal. I'm like, no, they're not. It's just a shoegaze band with the guy screaming. Well, it's a famous one too that came out like 2010. I can't remember what they're called. It's just a shoegaze band with a guy screaming like it's black metal. They're not a black metal band. They listened to My Bloody Valentine back in the day. And all that got old. And like there was one group, it was the last one that I found on Spotify. They perfectly reproduced the sound of the English punk band from 1977, Wire, their first album, Pink Flag. All these really short songs, and they're like, it's the Nervous Modern is what there's that record, and there's the early Talking Heads, and there's David Bowie's album Lodger, the Nervous Modern. That's a thing for a few years. And it's women playing these songs. It sounds just like the Wire album. And then I look at the track listing and their names. I'm like, they just look like Antifa people. And I don't want to give streams to that. No, thank you. No, thank you. I dusted my hands and said goodbye.
Well,
Um,
and it is funny, right? Because you start getting into. So I said him earlier, but somebody like Tyler Childers or even Sturgill Simpson, some of the guys out of Kentucky. It's almost this stoner. Let's all get along.
Tyler
It-
Childers bugs me because I think he's
right.
great. And the last thing my granddaddy will want to be listening to is country music with a couple of guys kissing. So I'm,
Wait,
there
what's that?
didn't he have some video of
It might be. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got caught off guard. I was like, no, he's not. But
he's
no.
like,
Yeah.
and I think there's some other documentary I saw on like
Yep.
millennial artists from like 5 or 10 years ago where they're all
Right.
copping this like gospel music vibe, but it's like
Yes.
a religious, which to me is like, okay, somebody call the Antichrist because he's on the way, and
Yeah.
it's appalling to me. I can't stand it. So it's like it bugs me even more because I really like Tyler Childers. I think he's
Yes.
pretty good, but I absolutely want to hit him in the head with something because I'm
Well,
like,
it is when you listen
it's
when you
subversive.
listen.
He's not country. You're not our people, buddy. I don't care if you look like us. You're not one of ours because you're subversive. So why don't you go back to the cave you came from, okay?
Well, and that's that sort of thing, right? Is and maybe even before you get into subversion, whether it's him or Coulter Waller, who's the Crockett fella. Anyway, there's a whole mess of
Yeah,
them.
I know. I don't forget who that is.
There's a whole mess of them right now, and I don't know. Even if we didn't get into the subversion, I don't know how performative any of this is.
Yeah.
And it is like, well, can you expect every guy that sings about a horse to be Chris Ledoux or something? Like, I don't know, man. Maybe you can't, but at the
I just
same
asked him
time,
not to be gay. I mean, is that asking too much?
right? Well,
Or that
it's
your horse is gay?
well, and so I thought it was interesting. You were talking about earlier the masculine, and I'm thinking as we move into the future, and this will probably be where we start putting a bow on it. Is who is it that we can listen to? Who's up and coming? What's going on? And I didn't know anybody right now, and so I jumped on and I started looking at country music festivals coming out this year. I'm like, well, who's popular? You have some of them where they're running back to the tried and true. I think Travis Tritt is on some of them. Keith Urban. Who else did I see? So just names, and the neo traditional that you would think of, but then also the one that I saw a lot was is it Kylie Ray and Dasha, and I was like, who
Kylie
are
Ray,
these?
I've heard of. I don't really know her music, but I know her name.
Okay, have you heard of this Dasha gal? Because
I
she
think I've
is
heard. I think I've also heard the name, but I hadn't. That name is off-putting to me. I'm
right.
like, sorry,
I'm
what hip
not here
hop?
for Soviet Williams.
I don't need crossovers from people that again are subversives or hostile to my values. So
Yes, and
I'm more that now than I was 20 or 30 years ago. So I'm like, no, thank you. You may go on with your minders may take you elsewhere.
yeah.
And you can prostitute yourself in some other way. No, thank you. Not here on our stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, too. Mm, Now here's where I piss off all our female fans. Not that we have any, anyways. Uh, but I used to about the only female country music artist I used to listen to was I did Carrie Underwood for a few years, and then even her anymore. I maybe the third album might have even been someone on the second album. I was like, man, I'm not feeling this, and I can't now. I can't listen to any of them. I can't. Well, I'm sorry. Alison Krauss is cool, and Dagum Gillian Welch is cool. I like both of them. But
I'm
there's something to the way that guys write lyrics for women, or maybe the women are writing the lyrics. I don't know, but it just it is a sign of our age that we're living in,
mm-hmm.
and it is very subversive, and
Yes.
it is very inelegant, and
Yes.
there's a lot of ugliness that comes out, and it even it's funny to me because I'm thinking like even Gretchen Wilson I can respect to some degree more than just a lot of the bitchiness that you see
Oh,
in the
that's the
girls that are
word.
more contemporary. What's
You hit
that?
the nail on the head. I remember this is like in 2012. It was at a low point. Been laid off from while I was working at an Aaron's Rents, having to collect bills on people on a rental place. And I was in the car, and I was eating my lunch and listening to the radio, and there were ads of Miranda Lambert was going to play in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was just like it was a deep voiced announcer. The ads for the concert was like the deep voiced announcer, like radio pipes, and then a clip of her singing, and it was just her screaming. It was like Miranda Lambert's coming to scream at you at the Voss University, amphitheater,
Hmm.
and it was her going rah, 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 rah. And it was just like, why would I want to do that to why am I sitting there listening to this radio and this
Yeah.
this country chick screeching at me, who I think are like her songs are she'd been jilted by somebody, and it was like
Right.
a whole concept album about how I hate my ex, except it was very shrill and not very old school country and too modern.
Yep. Yeah, and that's been the thing with me for the female artists in general. Like I said, there's a few of them that slip through, and I say, well, that's all right. But again, I don't know if it's the songwriters. I don't know if it's the women writing the songs. But
Or if
yeah,
it's the gay men that write them, yeah, it could be.
it's just and so that's a whole nother stream and a whole nother issue for one day. Is just the problems with songwriters and what that. Anyways, we won't even get into all that.
We'll put a bookmark in that and come back later.
Right. Well, yeah. So go ahead and we've been at this for a minute now. What hasn't been said that needs to be said? Are there artists you want to pump? And then where can people find you?
Not that I got all my notes out. So we hit the last thing was talking about the underrated songwriters who continue to grow in their prominence, like
Well,
David.
yeah. Go ahead and dig into that.
Well, it seems like their stuff has legs. Like there's as rough hewn as those guys seem, particularly like they're particularly rough, but they were saying a lot, and at the time, I think their appearance and their lifestyle might have detracted from some of the profundity of the things they said. And it's all those things I was saying earlier about what's expressed in the masculine country music singer. Again, and it's the preserve, it's the shelter place for masculinity in the era of feminism and civil rights and all those things. But like I said, because they were kind of rowdy dudes, they kind of got passed over to a certain degree, I think, because they were probably hard for people to risk their money on the market because they're a little unpredictable. But there's some profundity because they wrote their song, they wrote their own songs. And because I always think of George Strait having to have a list of songwriters. They wrote their own stuff, so it's fairly, there is, even if it's not intended to be autobiographical, there's going to be some of them in that. But they're usually fine about expressing a degree of themselves. But it's like that stuff. And like I said, I'd throw Billy Joe Shaver in that too. It seems to have legs as time goes by because their stuff was less explored in the 90s and the 2000s. So it's kind of, like I said, who did I credit that with? Is Reform Bocephus. Always touting that to me. So, but like I said, that happens. That's how people got to know like the Velvet Underground, the Stooges, because at the time they came out, they were not successful, but their work kind of there were people that championed them. But I think this is with its country, it's going to be more reflective of, it's going to be more organic than the rock critic pumping Iggy Pop to get him popular.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. And other than that, I'm overdue for an episode of the Alabama Dissident Christian podcast. In all the good places, and I'm on X is Jack Milton at Jake Getty's 2217.
Yeah, and I believe I've got all your contact info there in the description. I've definitely got some of it, so you can tell me if I missed any of it.
It's cool.
Post stream. But very cool. Well, thank you all for tuning in. I hope this hasn't been too dense. I hope it's given a little bit of introduction, a little bit of illumination when it comes to country music, where it came from, who it's for, what it's diving into, what it's exhibiting, and how it's participating in the great American experiment.
And it's a fun conversation too. I enjoy getting to talk at length about music.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it because my big problem too is that I come at it. I mean, shame on me, but I come to it as a consumer. Again, my musical skills are very, very little.
Well, that's what. But everybody loves music. I mean, everybody consumes it on a level. So I mean, that's part of the appreciation is why we all want music. What it adds to your life. I mean, in a profound sort of way. The better the music, the more profound the experience is.
Yep. Well, that's I laugh. So again, my gal, she's music, right? She probably could have been a session pianist if I hadn't stolen her away from music. Uh, and so, having said that, though, my great appreciation for music is still such an enigma. It's like, how does that work?
Well, that was a conversation we had talking about when friends of mine started playing music, and like I was a freshman in high school. We were just on the backside of Back in Black by AC/DC.
Okay, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, I don't want to hear this. At the time I was like, I really was not. And 1984 by Van Halen was getting, I was not, and I did not want to hear this stuff. Well, I
yes,
started playing music and you start analyzing everything on the album Back in Black. You're like, my gosh, how'd they do this?
yeah,
You're like a song like Shoot the Thrill. Like, how do they get the balance? How is it, I mean, they're not playing complicated chords, but how do they, if the dynamics and the crescendo and the piece is like I was saying about Skinner, the piece goes on just long enough, but not too long to get boring or repetitious.
yes,
And the lead bit is just short, it's something, but the dynamics and then the vocal performance, and it's all, how do they do all that? Because I thought this was just trash. It's like, no, there's a level of finesse here that I would say a couple of years later, even they couldn't do. Yeah.
okay, yeah,
My thing is like after For Those About to Rock, it's over. It's not the same. That's their last high point album. But like Back in Black being their
interesting.
Highway to Hell and Back in Black being their high water point.
Yes,
And that like I said, they had the formula to such a, not just they had the formula, they had a magic. They had the twist. They had just the perfect twist to everything.
yeah,
And then in a little bit, it's over. And then, like, as friends, like 18-year-olds, we're like, how do you? All of a sudden, I've got a profound level of respect for these guys where I thought this music was trash.
yes,
Like, how did they do it? How do you make that happen? That's crazy. How do you? And then how do you do it like convincingly in front of people? They're like, like you're gonna bite the head off a 10-penny nail,
right.
Or even
Well,
here, I'd never heard Whole Lot of Love. I'd heard Led Zeppelin before, but like when I was 18, I heard Whole Lot of Love on the radio. I was like, again, there's nothing going on in this song. It's just the riff and then the echo and the congas and the squealing. And it's like, this is amazing. I was so
yeah,
impressed.
okay.
There was so little going on in that song. So, the enigma of music, how does that work? Well, you can do it and still be like, yeah, how they came up with that, I don't know. I would have never thought that in a million years.
That's crazy. That's awesome. All right, that is a perfect note to end. Hey, this was great. I appreciate it, and to all our viewers, thank you much. All right, have a good one, guys. Out.
See you later.